This is Advanced Math 11.5 Notes, Part 2. That's Advanced Math, Unit 11, Lesson 5 Notes, Part 2. Now, in the original set of notes, I went over all of this with you. What is a hyperbola, the two standard forms, all this information, what is transverse axis, conjugate axis, how to find the equation of the asymptotes. And then I did number 1 with you, and I said I would do number 2 in class. And we are doing it in this video. Okay, so we are going to find the center, the vertices, foci, the length of the transverse axis, length of the conjugate axis, and the equation of the asymptotes. Okay, so center, opposite of the inside, outside stays the same, x stays with x, y stays with y, so this is like the way we're used to, 1 comma negative 5. All right, so we are going to go ahead and try to sketch that, and because of the fractions, I am going to space it out quite a bit to have room to get my graph in. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so I'm going to go right 1, down 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A is right and left, and A is the underneath the x because x is right and left, so A is 1/2. B is up and down, and B is with the y because the y-axis goes up and down. The square root of that is 1/3. So I'm going to go right and left 1/2, and up and down 1/3. Okay, that's kind of hard to see. And then you make your diagonals, which are going to be our asymptotes. And because the x comes first, that means it's going to open right and left. So from these two dots right there, going towards the asymptotes. All right, so what is that for us? That is, let's see, from the center, which was 1, negative 5, I went right and left. And when you go right and left, that's the x value that's changing. So from the 1, I went right 1/2, which would be 1.5. And then from the 1, I went left 1/2, which would be 1/2. And then the y value stays negative 5. So I have 1.5 comma negative 5 and 1/2 comma negative 5 for the vertices. Okay, foci, c squared equals a squared plus b squared, always the opposite of what the original problem is. C squared equals 1/4 plus 1/9. C squared equals 9/36 plus 4/36, which is the square root of 13/36, which is root 13/6. Okay, so root 13/6, I'm actually going to plug that in the calculator and see what I come up with. Let's see, 13. Ugh. Okay, 0.6. So this is approximately 0.6, which means from the center, I'm going to go right and left 0.6, which makes sense because I went right and left 0.5 to get to those 2 points. So 0.6 would be just a little bit further. All right, so how do I write that? When I go right and left, again, the x value is what's changing, the 1 plus or minus, and how far did I go? Root 13/6, comma, and the negative 5 is staying the same. And that's pretty much what's going to happen. Either x or y is always going to stay constant. Okay. The length of the transverse axis, I went right and left 1/2, so that would be a total length of 1. Conjugate is the non-vertice points. I went up and down 1/3. That would be a total length of 2/3. And remembering here, we need y minus y1 equals plus or minus mx minus x1, where your y1 and your x1 is always the center, because the center, both asymptotes go through the center. So that's the point we're always going to use. And the center is 1, negative 5. Put C for center. 1, negative 5. And then the slope, you're always going to do rise over run. Now, if you remember when we did it in our previous problem, in our previous lesson, when we did rise over run, rise was, what was it? 2, and then run was 6. And I said I would talk more about it in class. I'm going to do that now. When you're doing the rise and run, it's always going to be plus or minus b over a. Add that into your notes somewhere. Your m is always going to be plus or minus b over a. Now, I'm going to put an m in there. What that means is if there were a test question, and there will be, where they don't ask you for all of this. All they give you is this equation and ask you, what's the slope of the asymptotes? You do not have to do all this work. All you would have to say is, oh, it's plus or minus b over a, plus or minus 2 over 6, so plus or minus 1/3. Now, if you wanted to, you could graph it all and do your rise and your run. You're still going to get the same answer. Okay, so continuing with this, plus or minus b over a every single time. So b is 1/3, a is 1/2. So 1/3 times 2 over 1 plus or minus 2/3 for your m. All right, so y minus negative 5 is y plus 5 equals plus or minus m is 2/3, comma, parentheses, x minus 1. And that there is the equation of the asymptotes. So there's your information, there's your graph, and that is it for this part of the notes.